Okay, everyone. Welcome, everybody. Okay, here we are. This is very, very exciting for me because, we were in the midst of a series that I was very diligent on and really, really plugging away. And then a few weeks ago, I kind of flaked out. I dropped. I dropped the ball, and I was very frustrated by it. But you know how it is when you stop doing something? It's like when you stop exercising for a couple of days, it's so hard to get back onto that exercise bike or get back into your jogging or go back to the gym or whatever it is that you do for exercise. It's a little sluggish. The body is sluggish. There's a lot of resistance. And especially when it comes to something as significant and as important as this, and that is to teach about Moshiach. Why are my candles not shining over there? Oops, let me just give it a little bit of That's it. I like that better. A little more flame in the background. So, not enough, but at least a little more. But in any case, so you get resistance, especially since when it comes to something godly in the world, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, doesn't want that to happen. So he does whatever you can. So what happened technically was that in this series, the Key to Redemption, I'm still teaching the Rebbe's teachings of the last year that the Rebbe spoke to us, these phenomenal, mind-blowing talks about where the world stands in terms of the Messianic revelation and the world's status in terms of Moshiach. And I was trying to keep up with the Torah portions. As we were going this year, I started Bereshis and trying to keep up. Problem is that to these teachings, these classes, the Rebbe's talks are long and jam-packed, and sometimes take quite a few classes, which I didn't have the full ability to get that done. So I started falling behind. And then I did some traveling, which made it even harder to keep up. And I realized more and more that if I skip and I just go to the weekly talk where we're holding that week and skip a couple of weeks or a week or two or three, it's not the same because there is a buildup over here. And one lesson flows into the next lesson. So I was getting more frustrated that I'm falling more and more behind. And in that process of being frustrated, instead of saying, okay, let's just get started, I just allowed the frustration to drag me down and not to continue. But mazel tov. The mazel tov is that I'm here today and I'm ready to fresh and to start again and to continue where we're holding. And although we will not be studying based on, I will continue the lessons where we were standing, and although it will be out of season, which means now is coming Purim. We're between the two Purims. And we're going to be learning the talks that the Rebbe gave Hanukkah time. So we're going to be mixing Purim and Hanukkah, but it's still important. And we're going to continue from where we're holding. We're going to be a little off season. But, Torah is beyond time and space. So we're going to be tapping energies that are beyond time. And maybe we'll bring the miracles of Hanukkah down. We can use a little bit of Hanukkah miracles in Israel too. In addition to the Purim miracles, we can use the Hanukkah miracle as well, the victory over our enemies. So let's tap this energy where we're holding now and take it from there. So we were actually holding in the middle of a sikha, middle of a talk. Most of these episodes, I call each sikha, I call it another, every talk the Rebbe gave, we refer to it. The general series was called and is called Key to Redemption. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube and want to get the entire series, there is a playlist on our YouTube channel. There is a playlist called Key to Redemption, in which you will find 90 classes. This class that we are giving right now is class 91 in this series. So each talk the Rebbe gave, I refer to it as another episode. And within each episode, you'll find between 3, 4, 5, those are average. And we even had the class before this that had 7 classes. But usually they're more likely to be 4 classes, sometimes 5. So we did 3 classes already in this episode. This episode on Parshas Vayishlach, we did 3 classes, and this is going to be class number 4. The theme of the talk and the title of this class, in addition to being part of the series Key to Redemption in our hands, this particular episode, which is episode 35, is called Our Moshiach Unity with God Has Begun. Meaning, the Rebbe is explaining that when Moshiach is going to be here, the connection that we will experience to God in our souls and our attachment, not just in our souls, but our souls in our bodies as humans, we will experience a relationship with God unparalleled to what we've ever had before. It's going to be on a complete, unimaginable level, as we shall soon see. And that, the Rebbe said to us already 32 years ago, it is already in play. Meaning, from the truest point of where the Rebbe is seeing it, we are already capable of that kind of bond, of that kind of unity, and that kind of connection. It's possible that we are still sleeping, and we have our eyes closed, and we are not seeing reality for what reality really is. So when we don't see reality, when we see ourselves still with the old mindset, so then our connection is still 30 years lagging behind. So we had already 30 years already to wake up to the reality that the Rebbe is telling us. And the Rebbe generally is always 30 years ahead anyways. So we should be catching up. And so this is where we were holding. We were holding chapter 10 within this talk, Parshas Vayishlach 57, 52. If you want to understand, this is a very deep talk, phenomenal deep talk. To understand it thoroughly, please go back to the first 3 classes. Again, you can find them in the playlist of Key to Redemption. Look in the search in our channel. You'll see playlists. You can find it, Key to Redemption, and it goes You'll see it listed from the earliest classes to the last classes. So scroll all the way down to the ones to episode 35. And listen to the 3 classes so that you'll get a good appreciation of where we're holding now. I'm going to do a brief synopsis so that we can just dive right into where we were holding over here. And my estimation is we're not going to finish today. This is going to be class number 4, and we're going to have class number 5. Okay. So, and by the way, I mentioned earlier that we're off season. Because it's in the terms of when we're learning it now, it's not the season of the year and it's going to be sometimes it's a little hard to study the parshios that happened 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, and we're learning about them now. However, which is really cool, is that one of the future talks coming up very soon, episode 36, 37, episode I think 38. Let's see, 30. This is 35. So this Yutas Kislev will be 36. Vayeshev will be 37. Miketz will be 38. And Vayigash. Okay, yeah. Episode 39 is going to be a lot about Purim. Somehow in the middle of Vayigash, the Rebbe brings Mordechai and Esther in, and there's a whole discussion about Purim. So maybe if we can do an episode a week, the week of Purim or getting close to Purim, the week before Purim, we're going to be doing that one. And immediately after that, Pasha Shemos Ve'era, Bo is all about Passover. So it's going to be the weeks leading into Pesach. So we're not going to be so off-season. Okay. Now let's go right at it. So the main discussion in this particular talk is that the context of our relationship with God is a context of marriage. And the Rebbe speaks that there's two levels of a marriage. In general, we can characterize it as the dating period and the early stages of marriage, where husband and wife experience themselves still as two entities, and each one wants to impress the other one with their external qualities and light, as we call it, and you're trying to impress your spouse, but you're not really sharing your truest self. But then, as you live together for many years, and you begin to peel away the external and the superficial levels, and you realize that you're really truly soulmates, which means you're really one soul, then you don't have to shine light and impress the other one's external, because you and your spouse uncover how you really essentially want. And then you're just yourself. And in that self, you're just one. So the same is with God. God married us at Sinai. For the first few thousand years of our relationship, we are beneficiaries of God's light. We study His Torah, but it's an external Torah. It's the light of the Torah. It's the projection of His light that is coming upon us. But as we get to the time of Moshiach, we move to a much deeper bond in the relationship, where we're no more two entities, one receiving from the other, but rather we uncover how our souls are literally God Himself. And in that relationship, God can convey to us His essence. He doesn't have to project His light. He can just be Himself with us. And that's the deeper Torah that Moshiach, something that you can't communicate to anybody but yourself. But you can do it to your spouse, because your spouse is your better self in a form of someone else. So you have the pleasure of conveying and living with somebody, but someone who you can give your entire self. You can give that person your entire being. No one can tolerate yourself. Who we are at our deepest self cannot be tolerated by anybody other than ourselves. Because who we really are is on a level that we can only accept ourselves. So to communicate that or to give that to someone else, you would be burning the other person. It would be like acid. So that's why we have much filters. We have filters and filters and filters. And we project a certain image of ourselves to others so that they will like us. But that's not really what marriage is all about. Marriage is not about that you should find someone, that you can have a good roommate, you can have a good friend. Marriage is so that you can be one. You become one. It means at a certain point you have to remove the filters and let your truest self be free to be yourself. And the other is able to receive it because you've become so deeply one with each other, it becomes unimaginable to live life without the other. Not because I like you or I love you, it's just because I am you and you are me. And we are just one. And therefore, I can communicate myself. So with God, this idea that the Rebbe is saying is that in the Torah itself, there is the external Torah that we received at Sinai. And the time of the year that we celebrate that is on Shavuot, the time of the giving of the Torah, which is given to us in the third month of the summer, which we explained earlier, that number 3 is the month of bonding. It's the month of marriage. Because one is living single life. You're single, you're the only reality. There's no one but you. And then we grow up and we seek a relationship. And then there's number two. Number two is when you find someone you like, but there's still friction. You still haven't figured out that you're all one. So it's kind of sometimes clashing with each other. It's like couples. A lot of times go through. Truth is, every good marriage has a little bit of a stage where there is some friction, because this procedure of breaking out of the externality of a relationship and reaching a deeper oneness causes friction. But eventually you come to a much deeper grasp of each other. But in general, number 3 is the time of union. But the summer, the union of the third of number 3 in the summer is the more external element of our relationship. A marriage, but a marriage that's based on each other's light. We love each other. I love my husband or I love my wife because of this, because of that, because they're so kind, because they're so funny, because they're so cute, because they're so charming, because they're so humorous, because they're so generous, because they're so intelligent, because they're so compassionate, because they're so sympathetic. You can give all the various different beautiful reasons why you love the other person. But it's external because it's all based on this reason or that reason. It's not an essential bond yet. That's the relationship on the external level where God shares his Torah with us, the external part of the Torah. Now, that is in the summer. We'll see soon why in the summer in a moment. It's the third month of the summer because the Hebrew months begin in the month of Nisan. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. Sivan is the third month, the month of the giving of the Torah. It's also, the holiday comes out in the beginning of the month, in the first half of the month. Now, one of the primary ideas of this particular talk is that the first half of the month, when the moon is in a state of incline, the light of the moon is getting brighter and brighter and brighter, is indicative of the marriage between God and Israel, between the sun and the moon. The sun being the male, which we know is referring to God, the moon being the female, which is referring to the creation or referring to Israel, and God shining his light, the sun giving the light on the moon, which increases during the first half of the month, means that the dating process is going really beautiful. And your dates are getting longer and longer and a little deeper. You're sharing a little bit more of yourself, and you're giving your spouse or your fiance more love, more attention, more projection, but it's still only projection. And that's the reason there is more light in the first half of the month. And that's the reason why Shavuot, which represents God getting excited about us, and we getting excited about God, but on a more external level, therefore the holiday, like all the other biblical holidays, all come out in the first half of the month or in the peak of the month, which is mid-month, like we find Passover and Sukkot happen, and Purim in the peak of the month when the moon is receiving the full light of the sun, indicative of the idea that we are basking in God's light, in God's revelation. Then comes the deeper element of the relationship. On the more external level, we break the relationship. The bond, the marriage goes on the rocks. There's a lot of difficulties and hardship, and it translates into the Jewish people going into exile for thousands of years. It seems to be a breakdown in the relationship. We're almost considering, God forbid, severing our bond. God is angry at us. We're upset at him as well. And yet, from the deepest place in our soul, we somehow discover how committed and how deeply devoted we are to Judaism and to God. and how inseparable we are. Now, actually, the Rebbe doesn't talk about all of this. I'm just giving a little bit of ideas that's stated elsewhere, which, kind of, fit into this particular. If you want to know what the Rebbe actually said, listen to the first 3 classes. But just for this introduction, I'm bringing in this idea. So it's precisely when we get into the cold winter. It's a long night, and in our relationship as well, the relationship is not as beautiful. It's not as good. They get frustrated with each other. And yet, in the depth, when they get a little bit more distant and a little bit more from each other, from a very deep place, he and she realizes that my life is meaningless without you. Not because of all these beautiful qualities, because maybe you're not shining all the time your qualities. Maybe you're showing me certain parts of yourself that I don't love, maybe as not so attractive to me. But it's not about you. It's not about what you have. It's not about your qualities. It's you yourself that is a piece of me. You are me and I am you. That's the depth of the relationship. And that's the maturity that the Jewish people experienced after thousands of years, where there was so much reason for us to go find different pastoral lands, different places, different gods, if you might say, to assimilate, to find different ways and practices, to go ahead into different religions or different philosophies or different disciplines. And yet we can't move away from God. We can't move away from authentic Torah life. And even if we do move away, we just gravitate and come right back to it. Because we realize that our Judaism is not something we choose externally. It is embedded in who we are. We are a piece of God. And therefore, the godly mitzvot, they are our essence. That's what happens to us. And God on his end also goes through, so to speak, this experience, where he realizes that he didn't love us because we're so cute and because we're so smart and because we're so beautiful. He loves us on a much deeper level. He cannot either be without us. That's the maturity of the relationship. And then he shares with us these very ideas by opening up the channel of a deeper Torah revealed from the holy Baal Shem Tov, and then continue to be taught in Hasidism, and primarily in Chabad Hasidism, where the deepest core essential teachings of Torah are communicated, teachings that are etched in the divine essence, not on a more external philosophical level, but just teachings of the essence. He communicates that Torah to us. When does that's the higher and deeper level of marriage. And that takes place in the second half of the month. Because the second half of the month, the Rebbe goes into a long explanation. You can listen to it in the first 3 classes, where he explains that how can it be, the main question that he presented was, how can it be that the second half of the month, the number of days of the month continue to go higher when the moonlight is declining? If the second half of the month is less moon, I'm talking about the lunar month, so which is what we count in the Jewish months, so there's less moon, meaning less moonlight, which means the moon is receiving less light from the sun, which is a decline in the greatness of the moon. The moon's greatness is that she's a recipient of the sun, and she has less light. Then the days should be counted down. That means once we get to 15, we should start counting the 16th day of the month, or the 17th of the month, or the 18th day of the month should be counted as not 16, 17, 18, but 14, 13, 12. And the fact that it doesn't work that way, but we continue increasing in the second half of the month, is a sign that the idea conveyed in the second half of the month is not a diminishment in the relationship. It is a diminishment in external bonding. I don't need you to say a joke for me to be excited about being with you. I don't need you even to show your love to me for me to wanting to be with you. I just want to be with you because I cannot be without you. It's something of essence. It's not I need your romance. I need your. It's not. Of course, in a relationship, we should keep the fire lit. We should keep the romance burning. A husband and a wife should be tentative and kind and continuously doing whatever they can to attract each other, to love each other, to care about each other. But the relationship is not hinged on that. And sometimes it's precisely when we do away a little bit with those externalities because I don't need that anymore. I just need you. I don't need your birthday card. I just need you. I don't need your roses. I just need you. It's like the famous story of the couple that didn't have children. It's a midrash where the midrash says a story that there was a couple that didn't have children, and the law is that if you're married and you don't have children for 10 years, and you want to have children and you don't have children for 10 years, then it could be grounds for divorce. Ask your rabbi the halachic ramifications. I'm not here to give you the halacha, but there is this concept. Anyways, this couple didn't have children, but they loved each other. And then they came to the great sage, and he said, okay, we're going to do a divorce. And I think the woman, and both of them were heartbroken, but they needed to do it. In the end, what happened was, I think the rabbi gave the advice, Shimon Bar Yochai, I think it was. He gave the advice to them that they should have one last beautiful party, a romantic time together before they go to the divorce. And what happened was the woman prepared a beautiful feast for her husband. She had wine. And she gave him to drink. Oh, and he said to her, this is what happened. He said to her, as a gift before we break our relationship, I let you choose anything. He was a wealthy man. I let you choose anything of my estate for you to have, and that will be your memento from our once beautiful marriage, even though sadly it's coming to an end. So she said, okay, she'll choose something. Anyways, at their last, evening together, before the next day they had a scheduled divorce, she went and she gave him to drink. She poured him one cup and another cup till he fell into a deep sleep. And as she was sleeping, she called her servants and she said, take him in his bed and bring him to my house, to my parents' home, where she was going to go back. And the next morning when he woke up, he found himself in her house. So he said, what am I doing here? Like, why am I here? I shouldn't. And she's, aren't we getting divorced? This doesn't feel right. And she said to him, didn't you say that I can take one thing for myself? He said, yeah. So what did you choose? She says, I chose you. And obviously, they stayed married, and I think they got the blessing for Shimon Bar Yochai, and they had children, and they lived on the deepest level together. That's what we're talking about over here. It's a certain point where I don't want anything about you. I don't want your money. I don't want your even your highest qualities. I just want you because you are me and I am you. That's what we're talking over here about, this depth of the relationship. That's the messianic experience between us and God. Now that happens in the second half of the month. Because the second half of the month is exactly that. The sun is the sun's light is not shining to the moon, but that's not because the moon is farther than the sun. Actually, physically, the moon gets closer to the sun, indicating this idea that in the lack of light, there's actually more essence. And the Rebbe says that's why the marriage, this level of Torah, this is the essence of Torah, the secrets of Torah, is also given to us on the third month of winter, not the third month of summer. And the difference between winter and summer is a time where there's a lot of sunlight, a lot of daytime, there's a lot of romance, there's a lot of projection. Winter is a time of a lot of darkness. So where there isn't so much externality, that's the point. There's not externality, but there's depth, there's essence. And that's where the relationships, we discover the essence. And when is the holiday of the 19th of Kislev, which is the holiday of Hasidism, when we celebrate the Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year of Hasidism, it's on the second half of the month. Of which month? The third month. Again, it's about number 3 is marriage, but a much deeper marriage, a winter marriage, a marriage not in the light, a marriage in the darkness. But when we say this darkness is higher than light. It's the essence, connection of essence to essence, not external bonding, but internal oneness, the maturity of the relationship to a much deeper level. And that's what he says is both the 19th of Kislev, which is Hasidism, which uncovers the essence of our bond with God, and number two, Hanukkah. Hanukkah, we see the same theme. What do we see in Hanukkah? Hanukkah, we see, first of all, Hanukkah happens, the only holiday that's totally in the end of the month. It's not in the first half of the month when the moon is getting brighter. It's the 25th of the month. It's so much at the end. But we see something else in Hanukkah. It's so amazing. This is what we discussed in the end of last class. Is as the days of the month are trickling to it, the moonlight is trickling, which means the moon receiving from the light of the sun goes down to a tiny, tiny glimmer, hardly to the moon that it's dwindling away. There's no more light at all. It's dimmer and dimmer, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 20th, all the days of Hanukkah. Every day we're adding another lamp. First night of Hanukkah we light one lamp, second night 2 lamps, third, which means we're doing more mitzvah, and physically we're adding more light. So what does that mean? It's the same concept that we said about the days in a month. Less revelation, but more connection, more essence. And even that, but no. He says deeper. And it's not more essence concealed. In the time of exile, it's more essence, but the essence is concealed. There is more revelation of the essence. That's why you're lighting more light. Light is revelation. But it's not revelation of it's almost like a man or a woman trying to impress her husband with something superficial, where he almost looks at her. Am I a stranger? Do I even need this? It's a nice gesture, but at this point, it's this was good when we were dating. It's so out now. This is not what I need. So this is the idea over here. We don't need the light of the sun. I have more of you as you are. Just be yourself with me. And that's the idea of more candles, more relationship with God. Even though the moon, which is the reflection, is getting darker, but the essence is getting brighter. Okay. This is a summary of what we learned. Based on all of this, he says, now we'll understand something else. Why the year the Rebbe was giving this talk, the 19th of Kislev fell out to be on a Tuesday, and the 20th of Kislev fell out to be on a Wednesday. In which Torah portion? The Torah portion of Parshas Vayishlach, which is the story of the sale of Joseph, that story. However, the whole talk, if you listen to class number 1, the Rebbe began to explain what is unique in this year's particular setting when the Shabbos before the holiday of the 19th of Kislev is Parshas Vayishlach, and the dates are that Shabbos was the 16th of the month of Kislev. 16th. Now, let's just for 1 minute think about that. The 16th day of the month is the first day of the decline of the moonlight. Okay, so bear in mind what that is. So the Shabbos before the 19th of Kislev is, if Kislev is on Tuesday, which is 3 days after Saturday, 3 days after Shabbos, so 3 days before 19 is 16. So Shabbos was the 16th. Friday was the mid-month, the 15th. So in general, the 15th of the month, now hold it. And so what does it have to do with the 19th of Kislev? Is because the idea is, well, the whole premise of the whole talk is to explain how the Shabbos before the holiday draws the blessing and gives the empowerment for the holiday. Therefore, the chemistry of the holiday, its flavor, its whole makeup, which every year is different, is based on various different factors, including the Shabbos before that when it came out. So therefore the Rebbe says that the Shabbos that's blessing the 19th of Kislev, the Shabbos, the Saturday that's giving it its power, is the 16th of the month. And here it's important to understand, it's the number one, Shabbos is the 16th, which is a day after Friday, which was the 15th. Now Friday is also very important. Why is Friday important? Because we know Shabbos doesn't have anything on its own unless you prepare for Friday. There is a rule that we say that Misha Tarach Be'erev Shabbos Yechol B'Shabbos, that only someone who toils on Friday will eat on Shabbos, because since Shabbos you can't cook, so all food prep has to be on Friday. So spiritually it's also that way. Friday makes the Shabbos. Shabbos makes the week. So if I have a holiday coming out of middle of the week, it's powered by Shabbos, and Shabbos is plugged into Friday. So if we're going to want to know what the chemistry of the holiday is, we're going to have to take into consideration Friday and Shabbos, which in this case, in terms of the days of the month, Friday is the 15th, Shabbos is the 16th, and the holiday itself, which is the 19th of Kislev, is Tuesday, flowing into Wednesday, because the holiday of Yutas Kislev is kept for 2 days for reasons I'm not going to go into right now. But it was the 19th and the 20th, which are the primary days of the Chassid, where we commemorate Chassidism. Okay? Now, based on what we've explained now, that Chassidism is the new light of the future. The revelation of God communicating His essence to us through the essence of the Torah, which is the futuristic Torah of Moshiach, which begins with Chassidism. So he's going to explain, based on that, how the chemistry of that year, 1992, 57, 52, literally conveys it. Why? So, number one, since Friday is what makes the Shabbos, so let's look at Friday. Friday represents the perfection of the union. The sun and the moon have reached full bonding. Why? Because the sun has fully illuminated the moon being the wife, the sun being the man, being the husband. They're married, they're joined together. So there's a certain completion in marriage. However, in the old world, before the Moshiach world, where the type of the relationship and the bond between us and God was still experienced externally, like the first stage of marriage, dating type, then the 15th is a beautiful day, but the 16th, when the sun starts to shine a little less on the moon, it means there's a little bit of a decline in the relationship. We're going a little farther away. The romance is not so strong. The connection is not so strong. They're getting a little bit less attached to each other. Which, as we know, in a marriage, if you haven't uncovered your essence and you're living on a more superficial level, your relationship is going to be very up and down. Because it's based on moods. It's based on, if it's external projections, the projections will not remain the same. You can't be in your most romantic, controlled, filtered behavior always the same on the most perfect state. Even if you're trying to be the best husband and the best wife, you're just not going to do it. They're going to be sloppy days, and that's going to cause a little bit of a fissure in the relationship. So the 16th, and then obviously the 17th, and then is going to be declining. It's going to be showing those days where, marriage, how's married life? It's not so good. However, the concept of Friday being perfect marriage, but it blessing the Shabbos, Friday cooks the food for Shabbos, means that we can carry the perfection of the union that's showing on Friday, that is being shown on Friday, which represents the 15th. Sun and moon are in their perfect union. It's carrying over into the 16th. What does that mean? That when you're going to the 16th and there's a little bit less filtered light, there's a little less light, you're not losing, you're not diminishing the relationship. Actually, you're redefining your bond, your connection. Your complete bond is not based on luminous moments. You're realizing that even as the light is going down, you're still perfectly connected. And actually, you're even deeper connected. Because the light that's shining on the 15th is perfect marriage, perfect external illumination, perfect care, but that's not it. So this, when the 15th, which represents perfection, is illuminating into Shabbos, which Shabbos is already comes out on the 16th, what that means is, and the Shabbos is blessing. And remember, Shabbos is powering the holiday, which in general, a holiday means closeness to God. That's what a holiday is. But then what? And that's why all of our holidays come out in the first half of the month, because that's when you're closer. But suddenly we have holidays that are both holidays of the month of Kislev are happening in the second half of the month. So we have to dig deeper, say, what's going on over here? There's less light, and it's a holiday. And the answer is because this is futuristic holiday. This is the future. This is the deeper marriage, where I can be declining in the light and not feel farther from you. Actually, I'm actually deeper in one with you. I'm even past being in love. I'm just one. We are just one. So therefore, the Shabbos that empowers the 19th of Kislev is on the 16th day, representing a lessing of light, but the 16th, which is a day after perfection, which means the perfection of the 15th, the highest level of marriage, is not being diminished on the 16th. It's Shabbos. And from that place, from the 16th, we're blessing the 19th of Kislev. Because the 19th of Kislev, again, is the day when God delivers this deeper Torah, this Moshiach Torah, this revelation of essence. And when does the 19th of Kislev come out itself? Within the week. It falls out on Tuesday and on Wednesday, which the Rebbe says Tuesday and Wednesday also convey this theme. Perfect, essential bond, the marriage on the level of essence. Why? We know that Tuesday is generally considered a very good day to do things. Today is actually Tuesday, was Tuesday. Tuesday is a very good day. The reason why Tuesday is considered a good day in Judaism is because in creation we find that on Tuesday God said 2 times it's good, ki tov. Every day of creation God says 1 time ki tov. Besides on Friday, on Monday, where he didn't even say 1 time ki tov. Sunday God said he saw that the light was, whatever he created, the light was good, ki tov, that it's good. Monday he didn't say ki tov, because that's when God created division. And division, God is not happy about division. So he didn't say ki tov. Tuesday he says twice ki tov. So if you want to know, if you have a choice in a week, sometime in the week, to start a project, that says Tuesday is always a very good day because it's a blessed day because God said twice ki tov. Now the Midrash says that the reason, one of the interpretations for why it says 2 times ki tov on Tuesday is because it's good for heaven and good for people, good for the creations. That means that sometimes there is a goodness in the world, but it's only spiritually good. It's not good for, like for example, sometimes something painful happens and it gives us spiritual growth. So it's good for us on a spiritual level, but physically it's painful and it's hard, and it causes, God forbid, a deficiency in something, a loss of money, a loss of health. It leads a person to repentance. It leads a person to a deeper bond. Okay, so it's good for heaven. It's not so good for earth. Then there are times where good things happen and they're good on earth, or they're good between people, but it's not so good for heaven. The good thing about Tuesday is that it's good for heaven and good for earth. So the Rebbe takes that idea of being good for heaven and good for earth, meaning a bond between heaven and earth. The concept of the bond between heaven and earth means the theme of unification between the giver and the receiver. That's the whole theme of Eir. The giver and the receiver reach a harmony, a truer, deeper attachment. So Tuesday, the theme of Tuesday represents the yichud, the unification of the influencer and the recipient in a way that they become one. That's why it's good for both, for heaven and for earth. On Wednesday, which is the next day of the 19th of Kislev, the Rebbe finds another idea in which the union is expressed. But on Wednesday, even stronger. Because on Wednesday, what happened in the 6 days of creation on Wednesday? God created the luminaries, the sun and the moon. And the whole topic, the whole concept of the marriage over here is in the context of the sun and the moon. That's the metaphor, right? Initially, when God created them, the moon was the same size like the sun. Because the verse says God created the two great luminaries. Then it says God made the big one and the small one. But first it says he created the two big ones. Because initially the moon was also big. Then God told the moon, go shrink yourself, which we're going to talk about a little later. So the moon then became reduced. So Wednesday, initially at the time of the creation, sun and moon were equal, which is indicative and symbolic of the Messianic age. Because by the Messianic age it says that the moon will be as bright as the sun. Spiritually, that means that we, the moon, we will be on the level of God, which means we will not have to receive his light. We will be him. We don't have to be inspired by him. We don't have to be illuminated by him. We will uncover our essential oneness with God. The moon and the sun will be one. That's the concept of the second half of the month. The moon is not receiving light of the sun. She doesn't need his light. She is him. She doesn't need his light. So that concept is there on Wednesday, where you have the sun and the moon in only Wednesday this was. By the time Thursday came, there was a small moon and a big sun, Friday. But on Wednesday, there were the two large ones, which although it was something that didn't last long, but it was the ultimate intention that eventually will come back to that stage where the sun and moon are completely one. And therefore, the concept, and the 19th of Kislev coming out on Tuesday and on Wednesday, and the Shabbos before being the 16th, is all conveying this idea of a deeper bond where the moon becomes one with the sun, therefore not dependent on its light and its illumination, which is external, but on its substantial oneness. Okay. Now we begin chapter 10. Now, he says, this very deep concept is also connected to the Torah portions. Both Torah portions. The Torah portion of the Shabbos before the 19th of Kislev, and the Torah portion of in the week when the 19th and the 20th of Kislev actually fall out, which are the 2 weeks of Vayishlach and Vayeshev. See, till now, the Rebbe was working with the dynamics of time, with the calendar. He didn't touch the Torah portion. Now he's going to bring in how the Torah portion, which we read during that time, reflects the same theme. And he's going to work with two Torah portions, because the Torah portion changes on Saturday. Saturday we complete, and we always go on to the next. Since we're talking about over here, the Rebbe gave this talk on the Shabbos before the 19th of Kislev. So the upcoming week was going to be Parshas Vayeshev, but the week that this talk was given, the Shabbos that empowers it, is Parshas Vayishlach. And the Rebbe says, if you take a look at the themes of these two Torah portions, they both convey the same futuristic oneness with God that happens in the time of Moshiach. That we're no more a recipient of God's light, we are Him. So let's begin. Parshas Vayishlach, the Rebbe says, begins with the story of Jacob, Yaakov, sending messengers to his brother Esau, to Esav, telling him that I'm coming, and Esav is angry, and he comes out to greet him with 400 men. He comes on the attack, on the offensive, and Yaakov prepares for war, and the miracle happens. In the end, the brothers kiss. They have this magical moment of brotherhood, of reconciliation. So the Rebbe says what makes this Torah portion, Vayishlach and Vayeshev, the next Torah portion, which talks about after Jacob settles in the land of Israel, and the Torah's the narration opens up that Yaakov was living in the land of Canaan, and he wanted, as Rashi says, he wanted to live in peace, and then the troubles begin. Family, internal politics begin. Yosef and the brothers are envious of him. They take their brother Joseph, they sell him as a slave, that whole story. And look what the Rebbe is going to do with these two Torah portions. He says this is very different than the previous Torah portion. The story of Jacob begins in Parshas Toldos. That's when it starts telling us the story about the birth of Yaakov and Esav. Okay? The two twins. Then it continues in Parshas Vayetze, in which Jacob travels to he has to flee from his brother Esav, because he's angry at him, because he feels that he cheated him. He took his blessings, he took his firstborn rights, and Jacob runs away, and he goes to his uncle, and he's in exile, and he works, and he gets married, 4 wives, 11 tribes, comes back, and Vayishlach starts with his encounter with Esav, with his brother Esav. So the Rebbe says, if we look a little deeper, the state of Jacob, of Yaakov, at that time when he's ready, sending messengers to his brother Esav, is the time that in Yaakov's personal life, he completed the rectification that his soul needs to do in this world. The repair, the fixing, the work to refine the world, to refine the material world, which is the purpose of all souls coming into this world, to refine the physical world, and to prepare the physical world for the divine revelation of Moshiach. Yaakov completed that work in his own personal little world. In Parshas Toldos and Vayetze, he did the work. Vayishlach, the narrative of Parshas Vayishlach, begins in Yaakov preparing himself for the Messianic era. And I have to make a little introduction here. And that is that we know that all of world history and all the events that was going to transpire through thousands of years are all, in a nutshell, they're all contained in the lives of our fathers. That means Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the matriarchs as well, their lives were all of history in the micro. So when you're looking at their lives, they make their way from the beginning of time to the end of time, especially Jacob. Jacob takes us all the way into the Messianic era. So by the time Jacob has finished his work, he's already accomplished Moshiach. Although in the macro, it's still going to have to repeat itself for thousands of years of his children's work. It's almost like he creates the model. He creates the model, and then it has to be copied. And the copying of it on a global scale takes millennia of work. But in their own lives, it was in a nutshell. So the concept is that the first two Torah portions about Jacob's life, Jacob is wrestling with the world. There is a dark world. You see it a lot in Parshas Vayishlach. First of all, in the first, he's wrestling with his brother Esav, trying to get the upper hand. Esav represents the world, the coarseness of materialism. Jacob represents the spiritual soul. The spiritual soul trying to get a grip over the Esav is a brute. He's so powerful. He's so strong because that's the material world. In our own lives, it's our body trying to swallow our soul. Our animalistic self trying to completely eat up our godly self. And the first early years of our life, especially teenage years, when you're searching for self-identity, you're trying to figure out who you are, and you're experiencing your physical hormones, and your body is raging. And you then question yourself, are you gonna live a materialistic life, or do you discover your higher self? And that's the work in the beginning of your life, to master your soul over your body, to discover that we're spiritual beings inhabiting a physical world. We're not physical animal beings. That's primarily the first Torah portion. And that is Parshas Toldos. Yaakov is struggling with Esau, with the whole story. He's trying to make himself the firstborn. He's trying to get supremacy over Israel. He's trying to take the spiritual blessings and overpower and dominate the spiritual world over the physical world. Then Parshas Vayetze, as he goes to exile, is him actually, once he has established himself as a spiritual person, now he is to influence. Our job as the Jewish people is to influence the entire world, the Gentile nations, the physical materials of the world, to uncover its spiritual godly potential, to refine. And that's what Jacob does for 20 years, which later is going to translate into 2,000 years of exile for the Jewish people, where we do the work of refining and elevating the world. That's all exile. That's pre-Messianic era. What does Jacob do when he completes and he's coming back to the land of Israel, which is the end of Parshas Vayetze and the opening narrative of Parshas Vayishlach? Is Yaakov is on his way back to the land of Israel. What does that represent? The Jews completing the job in rectifying the world. We're ready to build the third temple, where we're standing right now, and bring God down into the world. Now here's an amazing thing. What does Jacob do at that time? He sends messengers to his brother Esau. What does that represent? Ultimately, the grand finale is not just going to be for the Jewish people, Jew and Gentile alike. The Jew had to work on refining the Gentile world. But once the time of the redemption is, the Jew has to bring the Gentile along with him. The entire world community, all of the globe, all of humanity has to come to greet God for this great revelation that's going to take place. Yaakov can't do it alone. Why? Because that's the mission that God charged Jacob with, the Jewish people with, to bring godliness to all of creation, to make everybody into a vessel for holiness and godliness, to transform all of the world, to become seekers of a relationship with God, to lift them from the materialistic stage and to transform them into spiritual seekers, into those who want to connect to God, which is going to be in the Messianic age. And especially, there's a very deep concept, is that the revelations that are going to come down in the time in the Messianic age are related to the souls of the Gentiles, not to the souls of the Jewish people. Because the souls of the Gentiles have fallen much, much lower into the darkness, and that's because they contain within them sparks from a very high place. So all the Messianic revelations are triggered by the Gentiles' rectification. So the Jew needs the Gentile to participate. Israel needs Rome, needs the Western world, not just the West, all of them. Primarily Esav is the Western world. And there's a rectification of Ishmael as well. All this has to transform. So what does Yaakov do as he's ready to march into the Messianic era? He sends messengers to his brother Esav and says, Esau, I'm ready. Come join me. I finished cleansing, preparing, refining the material world. Now me and you together can live the Messianic dream. Turns out that although Jacob was ready, Esau was lagging behind. And that's why he was still fighting. He was still the unrefined beast that he was. And he was coming to kill his brother. But you see that because on a very deep level, Jacob had done the work already. Again, and the reason why Esau was that way, because the model is not enough. We need to actually, in the literal sense, do the work with all the parts of the world. Jacob is doing it all conceptually, but it needs to be done in the literal sense as well. For that, we're going to have to spend thousands of years of mitzvah observance and Torah study and refinement in the land of all the nations until we can achieve this human metamorphosis and transformation. So, but you do see that the potential, the fact that Jacob broke through in this refinement on some level, you can see that in the moment when Esau finally meets Jacob and everybody's expecting him to pull his sword and to swing and chop off Jacob's head, God forbid, or as we know that he came and he wanted to bite him in the neck, and suddenly this enormous venomous bite with such rage and anger turns into the sweetest kiss, and the two brothers kiss, because in essence Jacob had already done the work. So Esav is standing there at that moment ready for Moshiach. Esau standing in that state, in that elevated state. So what does the Rebbe point out from here? Just one idea. He says that Parshas, the Torah portion of Vayishlach, is already the stage of Jacob after he finished the work of elevating the world, after he finished lifting the sparks, after he completed the work of refining the world, which is similar to the Jewish people in our state that we stand now. Now, what does this have to do with what we were talking about before, about our bond with God, our marriage with God? Very, very powerful. Very powerful. He says, that the Jewish people, are compared to the moon. And we receive the light of the sun. And the sun is big and the moon is small. And in our relationship, we are in the external level of the relationship. We are receiving God's light, which means we don't have any godliness of our own. We just can reflect God's light. We're receiving His light and we're shining it, but it's not ours. That state of the relationship, inherently for ourselves, is important for us to be in that external stage while we do the work of rectifying the world. We'll see in a minute why. The moment we're done with the rectification of the world, we're, like Jacob is at this point right now, he's done already with the rectification of the world. At this moment, there is no need anymore for us to be the moon to be smaller than the sun. Then the moon can return to her original glory when the sun and the moon were the same size. What does that mean? That means that our essential godliness of the Jewish people, of the Jewish soul, that is literally a piece of God from above, can fully manifest and fully reveal itself to the point that we do not have to receive his light anymore because we are, so to speak, as godly as God. So let's understand that. In order for, and let me put it this way. The moon needs to be smaller than the sun only for the duration of the entire theater of creation to play itself out. For history to play itself out the way God wants it, the moon cannot be as bright as the sun. And I'll put it in simple words. God's pleasure in creation comes about through the purification happening in the night, in the darkness. God created the world in a state of darkness. He wants from within the darkness the world should rectify itself. If the moon would be as bright as the sun, there would be no night. It would be all day. There would be no pleasure for God in the whole process of humanity. The whole process of humanity is that man has to work through the darkness, which means through the concealment, through the ignorance, through the distractions, through the pain, the sorrow, and the human being is on a search till they truly find themselves and find who they really are and connect to godliness. And then the relationship is so much more meaningful. So how long does the moon have to be dimmed? Until the rectification is completed. God wants us to fix the world while the world is in darkness. Let me put it in simple terms. Had God wanted, from the time of the Exodus, he could have left the light on. God was doing miracles then. He was shining his infinite light to the world. By the time of the splitting of the sea, by the time of the plague of the firstborn, by the time of the giving of the Torah. So why did he have to shut the light? After the giving of that, finally, God's light is shining throughout the whole world. Everybody hears God talking. God could have left the light on. The answer is, it would be, that's not what he wants. He doesn't want to illuminate the world because he is shining his truth. He is what do you call it? He is asserting himself onto us. He could have done that. He doesn't want that. He wants us to discover our bond with him when he is not revealed. So who is the godly representative to elevate humanity? So God takes a piece of himself, which are the souls, which are really just as godly as God is. But he cannot, and that's why the moon, when it was initially created, or Eve, when Eve was initially made, she was a piece of Adam. She's his rib. The souls are a piece of God. But God cannot deliver the souls into the world to rectify the world when the souls are shining brightly, as bright as God. Because then it wouldn't be dark anymore. The moment any Jew would be born in the world, the whole world would be lit up with infinite light. There would be no free choice anymore. Humanity would not have learnt and elevated itself slowly, that it itself should want God because it wants God, because we want God, not because of some of just being obvious. So during the time of the repair, the souls have to be reduced. That's the idea of the moon being shrunk in size. But it was only so that we can coax the world, the Jewish people can gently, without overwhelming the world, in a very, very, very covert operation. People, humans, like everybody else, living amongst the world getting very nervous about them. But yet the Jewish people mingle their way in the world, amongst the nations, learn Torah, do mitzvot, teach the nations, refine the nations, thousands of years of work. The true nature of the Jewish people is not revealed, it's hidden. So much so that the Jew becomes like the most despised people. The Jew becomes the most persecuted people. And everybody says, God has dropped you. You're not even God's people anymore. It's the story of Christianity. That's what Esau's been saying to Jacob all along. While Jacob is doing the work to fix Esau, Esau's claiming that Jacob is not the church. And that's because God keeps our light diminished. Now, if we don't have any light, then how can we fix the world? How can we illuminate the world? Just like the moon receives light from the sun, so God shines his light upon us through the Torah. We teach the Torah and disseminate the Torah in the world, so our light comes to the world. But it's only external light. But once the job is finished, and we've already rectified the world, there's no reason to keep the moon small. We can allow the moon to return to its essential state, which really means to allow the souls to explode into who they really are, the other side of God. And our infinity can be revealed, and our essential godliness can be revealed. So Jacob doesn't have to hide anymore. Doesn't have to be the small one. Jacob is called the small one. Yaakov hu hakatan. Esau is the big one. Jacob is the small one. The Jewish people are called the small nation because we count to the moon. You don't have to be small anymore. You can become super big. Take a look. Take a look. The entire world is obsessed only with the Jewish people now. Every show on television, every news anchor, everybody in the world is busy with Israel and the Jewish people. Condemning and shmandeming and calling and doing and making, and everything is about Israel. Presidents and this president, and either in love with Israel or in hate with Israel. But it's like amazing. Because the Jewish people are super big. We're the tiniest and yet the biggest. And that's the state we're in right now. So the Rebbe says that in the end, and that's the chiddush, that's the novelty of Parshas Vayishlach. We are already going into stage B of the bond. In Jacob's life, he's already past stage A, the dating stage. Again, the fact that we are like strangers, like two people in a marriage, like two separate beings who are in love with each other. That's only as long as God has to pretend that we are not him. But now after the work is done, he can let us be ourselves. It's like the thing in Disney. I remember taking my kids to Disneyland. Now it's so expensive you can't go, and I don't have little kids. We're going to remember. So we had the show, the famous show, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. God shrunk the audience. He shrunk the Jewish people to be tiny, but then he unshrinks them and allows them to go back to their godly initial state. And that's Jacob in Parshas Vayishlach. And that's what the Rebbe is saying is the 19th of Kislev. We are given the power to go back to reclaim our essential godly glory. So this is, again, he's saying why the 19th of Kislev comes out after Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach, because Vayishlach is the Torah portion that conveys that the work of it's called in Hebrew, it's called Avodas HaBirurim. The work of rectifying the world is over. And we are finished rectifying, and we're ready to enjoy the intimacy of oneness with God after the rectification. And Jacob was in that stage. That's why he sent for his brother Esau. No more fixing to do. We're both ready for the redemption. And I'm just going to say, there's a little footnote over here that is so powerful. In footnote number 74, the Rebbe is saying that, Jacob sent his brother Esau a messenger. And he said, I'm coming to see you. And the Rashi tells us that the messenger, the verse the Torah uses is, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. Yaakov sent angels. So you can read the word malachim could be messengers, but the Midrash tells us, the sages tell us, and Rashi quotes it, that he didn't just send messengers, he actually sent literal angels. Because angels came to greet him when he was coming back from his uncle's house. He was returning back to Israel. Angels came out to greet him. So he took these angels and he sent them to his brother Esau. So the Rebbe asks a question. You're sending messengers to Esau. He's a bad guy. And you want to check out how he's doing. Yaakov had his disposal. He has a bunch of servants. He has his sons. What does he have to send angels? Angels are holy beings. It's not like he sent them to defeat Esau. It wasn't for war. If then you can say, I need these angels, they'll be powerful. He just sent to go scan out to investigate or to send them a message. So you have to send angels? Especially the Rebbe says, angels are God's servants. So they have godly business to tend to. If you're sending them, so you're taking them away. This is only the Rebbe can ask this question. You're taking them away from serving God for what? For your own personal needs? You're worried that... So the Rebbe says, this wasn't just a mission for Yaakov's well-being, for Jacob's well-being. This was Yaakov reaching to his brother Esau to take his brother's hand and together go to the redemption. The redemption can only happen when Yaakov and Esau are doing it together, as we said, Jew and Gentile together. It comes out that this mission was such an important mission. This mission was the mission to activate the redemption. Since this mission was the act, and since the purpose of the entire world is the redemption, the time of Moshiach is the purpose of the world, including the creation of the world, including the creation of the angels, so there's nothing of greater importance. So even if angels have missions that God is sending them, Yaakov can abort those missions and say, the mission regarding bringing the redemption overrides everything. And therefore he sent messengers to Esau, he sent his brothers. That's just telling us how important this work that I'm doing here and we're all teaching about Mashiach is. More important than anything else in the world. I'm going to do a plug. This class that we're teaching now is the most important class in the entire YouTube. You like that? Because why am I doing this? I'm teaching these teachings. These are the deepest teachings. This is the teachings of the redemption. This work is the most important work. All of creation was created for this purpose. And therefore Jacob, the Rebbe says, felt perfectly comfortable using angels, God's angels, for this mission. The second connection, so this is Vayishlach, you see, is connected to this theme. We're done, Yaakov till now was small. And now he's sending to his brother Esau. He's already coming out of his smallness. The second is in the first Torah portion. This is the theme that we discussed earlier, where the moon will be the size of the sun. And by the way, the Rebbe adds, the message itself, the Yaakov sent messengers, the idea of Yaakov sending messengers to Esau, which is in order that Esau and Yaakov can come together, that itself is connecting the sun and the moon. Because we know that the Jewish people count to the moon and the Gentiles count to the sun. The Gregorian calendar, how's it called? I'm too tired now to say it correctly. Is a solar calendar. The Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. So the Jewish people count to the moon, the nations count to the sun, as the Talmud tells us. So when Yaakov is reaching out to Esau is called the big sun, Yaakov is called the small sun. And the sun is called the big luminary, and the moon is the small one. So the fusion of Yaakov and Esau coming together really has to it, that itself has to it this idea of the unification of the sun and the moon, which on the deepest level is the unification of the Jewish people and God. So that, see, so in the content of the actual mission itself, you also have this idea of the unification of the infinite and the finite. This mergence. But this is the connection to the first Torah portion. The connection to the second Torah portion of how it connects to the same theme, we're going to leave to next class, which explains Parshas Vayishlach. I thought we will get further, but this was good because we had to review a little bit to get me back into it. And Bezrat Hashem, hopefully tomorrow I will do another class on this. I want to finish this episode this week, episode 35. Everybody, be well and let Moshiach be here now. Gregorian, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the, I'm checking the comments over here. All the best, everyone. Be blessed. We'll see you all.